To learn how to program, you learn how to get big problems down to small problems. And to do that, you really need to learn functions. This video is part of the Python programming in simple English series. And this video is about functions. Okay, so what do you need to know to learn functions? You need to know how to call a function, how to pass things to a function, and how to return things from that function. So this is a gentle introduction. You can learn about functions and then you can test your knowledge with a quiz at the end. After the quiz, there's a code review, so you can look at all of the code from the video. Okay, so where do we start? We start with just a simple function. So here's the syntax. This is how a function is written. We start with define, which is def. Then we give the function a name, something that we can use, that we look at this name and we will have an idea what the function does. This is followed by some brackets and a colon. Then you put the chunk of code after this. The main thing you need to see here is there's a gap between the beginning of the line and your code, where your code starts. That's called an indentation. So that tells Python that this code is part of the function. So it's very important. So when you write your code in a function, it has to have this gap called an indentation. Here's an example of a function. We've got the def, we've got the function name, printname, and inside the function we've got a print statement. So when we use this function, we call it, and then in this example it will print, my name is John, hi there. Here's another function. You can see that each line underneath has that indentation. So we can see we have 4 print statements and they're all part of this function called printnumbersquared. So how would we call a function? How do we use it? Well, we just call its name. So the name of the first function was printname and the name of the second function was printnumbersquared, and we use the brackets after as well, so don't forget them. One thing you might notice here is that we've got printname a few times. You can reuse the function. That's one of its advantages. So we can call the function many times. So here we've got printname, we call it, and then we can see the output, my name is John, hi there. We also call printnumbersquared function, and then we can see the output. The square of 1 is 1, the square of 2 is 4, the square of 3 is 9, the square of 4 is 16. That's the basics of the function. Now we're going to see how we can use it. Here we've got a function called printnumbersquared, the same like before. We've got a variable called mynum, which equals 4, so that's an integer. Here we've got another variable called sqnum, short for square number, which equals mynum times mynum, which is going to be 16 in this case. And then we're going to print the square of 4 is 16. So when we call that function, that's going to print the square of 4 is 16. So that's not much different from what we've seen before. But now we can change this. Notice now we've taken the number out of the function and put it in the brackets. So when we call the function, we're going to pass the number 4. And if you look at the function name, printnumbersquared, in the brackets, now we've put mynum. The rest of the code and the output is the same. We're going to look at some examples now. First of all, just a reminder of how to use a range. So here's a for loop with range going up to the number 5. So in the output you can see it goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. It doesn't include 5, but it goes up to 5 from 0. So now in a for loop we can call this function, and instead of just passing it the number 4, we're going to pass it 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the code's the same, but now we're going to call it 5 times. Now we look at the output. We've got the square of 0 is 0, the square of 1, and the square of 2, the square of 3, and the square of 4 is 16. So we call the function 5 times with a different number passed to it. Okay, so we've seen how we call a function, we've seen how we pass something. Now the other thing that's important is how we return something from a function. So here we can see a function called getANumber. We have x equals 1 and then return x. So return x passes this x, which equals 1, back to where the function was called. And you can see when we called the function, in front of it you've got y equals. The idea is that the x, which is inside the function, gets returned to your normal code, and in this case it's y. So that's returning from a function. So how would we use that? So here's our code from before, where we called a function 5 times and gave it the number 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we printed the square of those numbers. So that was the previous code. So that, as you can see, the output, the square of 0 is 0 up to the square of 4 is 16, same as we saw before. Now we're going to add return square number, so the print statement's not in the function itself, and then we look when we call the function, instead of just calling it, we've got the sq value, the variable where the return value is coming back. So we're going to call the function, the code in the function runs, and then this variable sqnum is going to be returned from that function back to our code. Now something's got to catch it, if you like, and that's the sq variable. So now in our print statement we've got the square of n, which is the number from our range 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then is, and then sq is the square value which our function calculated. So that will have the same output, but this time we've called a function, we've passed something to it, and we've returned something to it. Finally, we can also pass and return multiple values, more than one. So in this example we've got a couple of numbers, 5 and 8. We're going to call a function double numbers, and that's just going to double each integer. So we pass them as num1 and num2. We have x and y in the function. They're multiplied by 2, both of them, and then they're returned. And num1 and num2 also are used to get these return values. And if we print them, instead of being 5 and 8, the numbers will be 10 and 16 because they're doubled. Okay, so that's a gentle introduction to functions. Now let's test your knowledge in the quiz. Write a function that prints a list. So we've got an example list, a list, which equals 2, 4, 8, 1, 3 and 9. So you can either pass that to a function that prints it, or you could pass it and return it back and print it. That was question 1. Question 2. Write a function that takes a number as a string and returns the number as an integer. This is a bit of practice. So you're going to send it num, which is a string, a character 7, and you're going to return it as an integer 7. That was question 2. Question 3. Write a function that can add two numbers or add two strings. Call the function twice. Pass two numbers the first time, and then the second time pass two strings. So that's a test, and there's two ways to test it. So two tests. So we're going to return the values and then print the answers. So that's question 3. Question 4. Write a function that doubles an integer. Return and print the new value. Call the function using a range of numbers from 0 to 10. So you're going to pass it numbers from 0 actually up to number 9 and including 9, and then the function is going to do something, and then your code will print the double of each of those numbers. That's question 4. Question 5. Write a function that takes the name and splits the name into words. So you can use something called text.split for this. So what that means is pass a string and then split that into substrings by the space, and that's what text.split will do. So for example, if you pass the string John Smith, that will print John. You're only printing the first word. So we have John Mark Smith, that will also print John because that's before the space. Now Johnny to go doesn't have a space, so that will print Johnny to go, the whole string. So that is question 5. Okay, good luck with them. Pause the video, come back and check your answers. We'll give you the details of how to answer them, and also we'll have the code review after. Okay, let's go through the answers. Okay, question 1. We wrote a function that prints a list. So we have a list 2, 4, 8, 1, 3, 9. We call the function print list. You can call it what you wish, and in the brackets you have the list name. Now in the function we've got the print list function name. We've defined in front of it def and the list or a list name in the brackets, and then we're just a simple print statement, print a list. You can print using brackets here in Python 3, and that will print the list 248139. Okay, question 2. Write a function that takes a number as a string and returns a number as an integer. So here we've got a string which is the character 7. We've got the function called convert to number, and we pass that a string variable. Now look, we've got a num equals convert to num, so we're going to return something. The function, similar to before, we've got the variable name in the brackets, and what we're going to do with that a string is we're going to change it to an integer. So num equals int a string in brackets. So now num is that string but as an integer, and that we return using the return keyword, and that means that in our original code a num will equal the integer 7. So when we print it we see the output there, 7. Question 3. Function that adds two numbers or adds two strings. So it adds two numbers or adds two strings. Okay, so let's look at numbers first. We've got x and y equals 1 and 2. We call the function add2 with x and y. In the function we've got c equals a plus b. So the two numbers are added together and they're returned to the letter z. So we print that and we've got the answer 3. So that seems quite straightforward, but we want to do it with numbers and strings. Okay, well actually we can pass different types using the same function. So here we've got exactly the same code for the function, and we call it exactly the same way. So the only thing different here is that we've got, instead of having integers 1 and 2, we've got hello space world. So two strings can be added or concatenated together. So instead of adding 1 plus 1 equals 3, we've got hello world, and you can see that in the output. So the function itself is identical for adding two numbers or adding two strings. Question 4. We've got a function that doubles an integer using a range of numbers from 0 to 10. So we have for n in range 10 in brackets. We call the function with n, which is the iterator in the for loop. Yeah, the variable that we use, you can see n in this example. So n goes to the function. The function just adds n plus n and returns the double value, double num in this case. So in our code, DBL, short for double, is then used in the print statement. So the double of whatever the number is a double. So we have the double of 0 is 0, the double of 1 is 2, up to the double of 9 is 18. So the for loop with range 10 goes from 0 up to 9. Finally, question 5. Write a function that takes a name and splits the name into words and prints the first word. So you can use text.split. So here we have a name, John Smith. We call the function with the name in brackets. So the function first name receives that text. We can split that into words by using text.split. And the first word is going to be the first element in the list, because split always returns a list. So words will be a list, and the first element of the list is going to be the first name in our example. So we can return word 0. So word 0 is the first element in the list. So we return that, and that's going to be fname is going to equal that value. So then we can print the first name is, and then in this case it's going to be John. So that was question 5. So the output would be the first name is John. Okay, great. I hope you're enjoying this. If you haven't already, subscribe. And now, just so you can review all of the code, we have all of the code from this video in slides again. So hope you enjoy this, and if you want to leave a comment, please do so. We'll try to answer any questions. Okay, enjoy. Bye for now.